Der går live, så må vi se. Der skal noget på YouTube. Sådan. Så skal der selvfølgelig på et tidspunkt. Oh, wrong language. Sorry. Welcome to the channel. See if everything is working. Yeah, seems like it's working. I got this. Yeah, I got myself. I need to turn off the sound so I don't hear myself with a delay. That's annoying. Well, anyway, let's get started. Take these off. And let me put myself on the screen. Here we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The first time we are going live here on the channel. We'll see if that's something we should continue with or not. Let's give it a try and see what happens. Should be able to do like this. So just put together some slides to get a little bit of structure for the day. Let's see what we have on today's stream. I'll be better at this. That's great. Today's stream, just a few words on why streaming. Why would this be valuable? Why would it be a good idea? And then something about this week's video on the ideal food. I should have it here. I'll just post it in. See if I can do like this. Sorry, I'm testing out a few things. Yeah, so the link is in the chat right now. That's cool. Let me put myself back on. Here we go. I'll be good at this at some point. I think I can do this. So I'm on the other side of things. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, a little bit about the video that I put out earlier this week. And today is mostly about just see if everything is working, getting some experience with things, and take it from there and see if this gonna be a thing. Think about having it like once a week, but let's just dig into this, the value of streaming. Why stream in the first place? I think let's get into it. I mean, there might be some comments and questions to the videos that might be interesting for more people. So if there are some comments and questions to the videos, which I hope there will, I will pick them up during the week, and then we'll go over them one by one. And yeah, I can talk about it, and you can comment on it in the chat if you want to. So that is sort of the idea, to have sort of an extended talk about the video. So that was one of the ideas. Have it a little bit more informal. So yeah, get to know the community. I think that's the next one. Yeah. I hope to establish a community around this channel. The whole idea with the channel is essentially to make Martinus' work relevant to people who has the questions that Martinus can answer but don't know him. So the idea is to make videos where I essentially take a topic that Martinus describes and sort of make it into a video that takes it departure in something that isn't Martinus itself, but where Martinus can actually give an answer to based on the topic. Let me rephrase all that. So essentially, you have a topic. Let's say this week's video, that's the ideal food. Martinus has written a book about that, and we'll come back to it in a minute, what he states about that. So the whole process and the idea with this channel is essentially to make a video about the ideal food with sort of an entrance to that topic that isn't based on that you know Martinus already and want to read more about Martinus, but it's actually a question or some kind of approach or idea where you want to know about why going vegetarian, for instance, and then you can have the answer that Martinus gives, and maybe that's interesting to you, maybe it's not, but that's sort of the idea, to make a lot of different entrances to the work of Martinus. And then the idea with the streams are to follow up on this if there are any additional questions, stuff like that. Maybe we can even have some fun some of the streams. We'll see about that. So that's the idea. And yeah, that's cool. So that was about streaming. I think I will do it on Sundays here at 9 o'clock. I think that's what suits me the best. I know there are other countries in the US, for instance, where the time zones are pretty bad, but that's what I think is feasible for me actually to do right now. So that's what I'm aiming at. Cool. So okay, I can just do it here. So let's talk about this video that I put out this week. I'm trying to learn a lot about doing YouTube. It's turns out that it's not that easy. There's quite a lot you have to be able to do. So I'm still on a learning curve. It seems like the smart guys who knows YouTube says the first 100 videos, that's where you learn the craft of doing YouTube. And I think I'm on my 5th or something like that. So there's still quite a lot. How to script, how to manage cameras and all that kind of things. But feels like I'm putting something on top of it every time. So this was this week's video, and there are some points about Martinus in it that I will go over. Machine wants me, so I'm just gonna talk about it, and we'll take it from there. So one of the key concepts in the video and about the ideal food in general and being a vegetarian is this idea about micro-living beings. He essentially says that I mean, we know ourselves as humans, that we are alive, and we know that the plants are alive, and the animals are alive, and but Martinus extends the notion of living beings quite a lot. So he essentially states that we have macro living beings, that would be the earth, would be a living being, and the sign of a living being is planning and logic, which behind that there will be some consciousness, which essentially is a living being. So the fact that the earth is so organized with oceans and in general making it feasible for us to live here is like that is essentially our advanced house that we live in. And he states, Martinus, that that's logic, and so there's a living being behind that. And the same goes for the solar system, which is where the Earth is living. So that will be the macro living being of the Earth. And again, the solar system is within a galaxy and so forth endlessly. So the whole universe is infinite. So that's one way. That's the macro living beings. And then we have our own living level of living beings. I believe it's called the meso, or sort of in between level of living beings. And then we have the micro living beings, and that's what gets interesting for for our food. So essentially, what he states is that the food also consists of living beings, and we have to go down to a quite low level. So we have the organs, we have the cells, we have the molecules, and then we get to the atom level. Martinus states that the nutrition and the digestion happens mostly at the atom level. So that's what we have to look into to understand the digestion, basically. I think I will just go do like this, so people can actually see me. Yeah. So most of the digestion happens at the atom level, and so the interesting part here, and that's maybe my next. Yeah. So we have to understand that our body consists of living beings, and the food has living being within it. I'm not saying a potato is alive, but the potato consists of living beings. And those living beings, they have, here, they have different levels of consciousness. So as we see it at our own level, we know ourselves, and if we take the Earth, we are the most advanced living being that exists on Earth. And we know animals which are less developed than we are. We know plants that are even lesser developed. And Martinus also talks about that minerals are living beings as well, but with almost no physical consciousness, almost no consciousness on the physical part of the world. The plant has more consciousness on the physical plane, but they're only aware of what is going on, where animals and we have sort of, we can think and experience directly what is going on. It's not just awareness, it's we are not just aware that there are some water, we can actually see and understand that there's water. So we have much more consciousness on the physical plane of the world. Anyway, so there are different levels of consciousness among living beings, and the same goes for the food that we eat. So essentially, what happens is that the food consists of different living beings, and Martinus states that we get into our body has different has to do different amounts of work in order to get the actual nutrition out of the food. So it's a very simple part of it. He says it's almost spiritual in a way, that the nutrition that actually gets from the food into our body. So the body has to do, there has to be a process, we call it digestion, right, in the stomach, in order to get these small, very simple, this simple part of the food out of the food. So that's the process that happens in our stomach. And then he says the meat-based food consists of quite advanced living beings, micro beings. So they're very tiny, but their consciousness can almost be at the same level as us. So our body needs a really hard time of work to actually get those living beings away so you can get into the actual nutrition that can go into your body. Whereas the plant-based is more simple in a way, and we can almost imagine it, right? That we as human beings are, I mean, if something came and tried to kill us, basically, our resistance is a completely different and more advanced type of resistance to that than a plant will be. I mean, we can move around, and we have, if we're animals, we have something to fight with in some ways, and as human beings, we even, I mean, we have weapons and stuff, right? So we can really start a war in the stomach if a living being like us came down into the digestion. But a plant is pretty simple being, but there still has to be some kind of killing within it, but it's way less. It's not so hard on our body as meat is, or high level beings. So so that's the difference basically between plant-based and meat-based food. And Martinus also talks about that in the future, when we are more developed and become what he calls real human beings, we will actually start eating fruit, and that will actually be the ideal food in the future for us. But for now, our whole digestion system is built to be. He talks about it needs to be filled up. So we are still living out of plant-based food, and of course we can eat fruit and so forth, but we need the potatoes and carrots and so forth. That's where our digestion system is right now, according to Martinus. But in the future, we'll start eating fruit, which is even easier than plant-based food to get these nutrition part of the food out and into the body. It's almost not a process at that point. And even further in our development, he talks about that we will start where our nutrition is basically air. So we'll live out of air. Anyway, so that's sort of the theory, or what Martinus states, that depending on what kind of food we eat, we put different types of living beings into our system, into our stomach, and that creates different reactions in our stomach. And he talks about that this is happening at the atom level. So when you eat meat, you start this war between what is in the digestion system and the food that comes in there. And he actually talks about that at the atom level, you will experience almost, I mean, the atoms are literally exploding. That's kind of the process that goes on. Whereas if you see the plant-based, it's much more peaceful in a way. There's still some overcoming, but it's not this total war in a way. So that's the difference. Yeah, so here we have my notes that we have humans, animals, plants, and minerals. Let's see what the next thing is. Yeah, so that's just stating what I already said, that the high development microbeings, that would be animals and so forth, in the food is a much bigger burden for our body than the plant-based food. And here we have it again, high developed micro living beings in the meat, less developed in the plant. So we get, let me just do this. You can actually see it. Yeah, less developed in plant-based food. And I'm just rephrasing. So killing takes place in the stomach to get the actual nutrition in the food. Yeah, so what can we actually learn from this? Do this, maybe. this. Just moving a little bit around. That's what live streams is all about, right? That you can actually do those kind of things. Yeah, so what are the sort of the output of all this? What's the beef here? Oh, wrong wording. What's the point here? Well, essentially, most of the argument I've made here is the health one. That essentially that you are overburdening your body if you eat meat, according to Martinus. So essentially, it's not gonna happen overnight. He talks about it might even take 0 lives, but you're essentially undermining your own body by this killing process that goes on in the stomach. So that's one part of it, the health aspect of it. The other aspect is an ethical aspect. Quite a lot of vegetarians, due to ethical issues, they don't want to participate in killing animals. But this view that the food is smaller living beings, that actually extends that view quite a lot. Because if you kill an animal and you eat it, its body, you're essentially killing one animal, right? And that could be bad enough. But if you think about it in this micro living being perspective on top of that, you will also see that when you eat the meat, you are actually, on top of killing the animal, also starting this war in your stomach. So in that case, from that perspective, you're not only just killing an animal, you're actually causing a lot of trouble for your microcosmos on top of that. So the whole ethics perspective, the ethical perspective on this is way broader. It's not just one animal. It's a whole range of living beings that gets in trouble for that. And of course, the plant-based also cause some trouble for some of the living beings, but again, they are much more simple, so it's not such a big problem for them. Martinus even talks about that the plant-based, or the plants, they are living, their development is going towards the animal kingdom, so they need sometimes the unpleasant experiences to actually develop. So for us, it would be unpleasant to get our body destroyed in some way, but it's actually a plus sometimes for the plants. And he talks about that they, with this very simple consciousness they have, it might be a pleasure in some way, in a weird way for them, because it actually helps them in that development. But we are beyond that, so we don't, for us it's not a pleasant thing, essentially. So to answer the question on top of this, on this slide, why vegetarian is better than non-vegetarian, well, there are health things. Don't know how much the traditional and normal science actually has on this. I guess time will tell. But Martinus is pretty clear. This is the ideal food for us right now. We are at a place in development where we go from the animal kingdom towards the real human kingdom, and we are in between that. So we are sort of this sphinx living being where we are partly animals and partly humans, and in that development we are at a stage where we have left the meat eating behind. Well, we haven't, because it's still pretty big part of how life is lived on the planet, But essentially, if it wasn't for old habits, social stuff, essentially we don't need it anymore. Our body don't need it, and it's actually such a big burden for us that we should, and probably will sooner or later, start leaving the meeting behind. We see it sometimes. I mean, here in Denmark, like 10-15 years ago, if you are sitting at your work and discussing food, which was something I haven't done a lot, but the few times it happened, it was kind of, you had to explain, or the expectation was that you actually needed to explain why you were vegetarian. But it kind of turned around a little bit for a period of times where the people who were eating meat felt like they should actually explain why they were eating meat. And I guess right now it's more like maybe the debate is not that big right now. So it's kind of going both ways again. But you just see those jumps where a topic becomes a thing. And yeah, vegetarian, or being a vegetarian has been kind of a thing you can do without being too much of a weirdo, actually, which is kind of nice. But anyway, back to our development. So we are in this process of becoming real human beings, and on the road to that. Right now, vegetarian is what suits us. So that's why we should say why vegetarian. That's because it essentially suits our development right now. We used to be less developed, and then back then meat was fine, and in the future we will actually go into this fruit-based and nutrition, and at that time even being a vegetarian will be something we have left behind. Yeah, so that's sort of so that's one part of it, sort of the physical body part, but there's also the mental part of it. We might start to feel bad about being part of killing animals. Right now, if you eat meat, you are not directly involved in that process. Of course, there are people going hunting and stuff, so they know it. But the majority of all people, they are not participating in actually killing the animals. So that's probably gonna extend the meat eating quite a lot, because you don't have to do it yourself. I'm pretty sure if people actually had to kill the chickens or the cows or whatever, the pigs and so forth, quite a lot of people probably bail out and say, okay, that's too much. I really don't need to eat it, and I don't want to be part of that. But that probably takes sometimes still to get where people actually feel so bad for the animals that they say, hey, I don't want to be part of that. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about also is when you start to get these feelings that you don't want to be part of it, there might be a period of time where you are still doing it. I had it myself, and you might start getting bad consciousness about it, and that's a pretty good compass for your life, basically. So in the case where you start to get that, that's where you really should start considering switching over to being a vegetarian, because that's where even your mental part, I mean, one thing is the physical part, which is bad enough, but if you start getting bad consciousness about what you're doing, that's actually, I mean, you can get sick in the physical body, but Martinus also talks about that you can get some kind of sickness in the mental part of you, or in the mental spiritual bodies that we have. And bad consciousness is, I mean, it might not be the most severe sickness, but it's still something, right? It means that you're not happy and so forth, and you have to get on the other side of what you have done. Bad consciousness is essentially that you have an ideal you have something you can, on Danish it's nenne, so you can essentially what you can and cannot do to other living beings. And if you sort of cross the line of doing something that you really don't have as an ideal, we see it in traffic accidents. If someone drives a car and someone steps out in front of the car and there's nothing the driver can can do to avoid it, so this person still gets hurt, right? So the driver gets hit by bad consciousness, even though the person couldn't do anything. It's still a burden for this person. So that's part of. If you get to that point, that's where you really, when you understand the health part of it, and you start to get this kind of mental state where you just simply don't feel good about it anymore, and even might get to the point where I start feeling really bad about it, then it's time to start. That's where you really need to be a vegetarian. Until then, it might be for health things, which is fine, of course. It's better than not being it, or it might be a complete ethical thing and not a health thing, which is fine as well. But when you have both of them, you know it's bad for your body. You might probably have felt it yourselves in some ways. I myself had some severe stomach issues, and I became vegetarian. It didn't solve all of it, but I think it solved some of it. At least I have some experience with a bad stomach. That might not be the only health issue you can get from it, but that was what I was through. So I stick to being a vegetarian because I don't dare to go back, basically. So that's one part of it, and the other one is that you really don't want to be part of killing animals, and that's even without this micro living being thing, because that becomes, I mean, you know, the cows are being killed and so forth. So that's very concrete, but you cannot, with the consciousness that we have, experience what is going on in our stomach directly. I mean, we cannot see the atoms getting exploded and so forth. Just gonna do like this. Gotta keep it a secret what I'm drinking. People who knows me knows what I'm drinking. Anyway, it's sugar based. It starts with a C and ends with an A, and it's in 2 words. Anyway, where was I forgot about that. Yeah, so at some point when you know your health is at risk, and you know your mental, let's not call it health, but your state of mind is at risk if you eat animals, well, that's where you really need to become a vegetarian. I mean, there's just no way back at that point. It's really not a choice anymore. It's more like I have to go there. Anyway, I think that was what I had about the video. It's in the description and probably in a comment in a moment, and I'll also put it in the chat. So if you feel like seeing it, do that. I think I have one more thing here. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. If you do that, if you have comments or questions on the videos, it will be a big help for these streams, of course. It's easy for me to follow up on all the videos and the comments to all the videos, so feel free to do that. Yeah, subscribe, like, all that. That helps. So I think I'll just say yeah, thank you, and let's see where this goes. It was not a lot of interaction because I haven't really broadcasted it a lot, but it was fun to do actually, and I believe if there are like a few people in the chat, that could be really fun actually. So let's see if we can get that and take it from there. It's yeah, it seems pretty straightforward, but let's evaluate a little bit on things. And yeah, I'm gonna look through it and see what's happening. So let's just that takes a while. I think we did it all right. Yeah. Let's stop with this one. So I'll just check out and say thank you again. Bye.